The early discoverers and investigators claim that the myth of Adapa as a true Babylonian parallel to the biblical story of Adam. Adapa, in Mesopotamian mythology, is a legendary sage and citizen of the Sumerian city of Urdu, the ruins of which are in the southern Iraq. Endowed with vast intelligence by god Enki, the god of wisdom, Adapa became the hero of the Sumerian version of the myth of the fall of man. Enki was the Sumerian god of water, knowledge, mischief, craft, and creation, and one of the Anunnaki. He was the son of the supreme god Anu. The myth relates that Adapa, in spite of his possession of all wisdom, was not given immortality. One day, while he was fishing, the south winds blew so violently that he was blown into the sea. In this rage, he broke the wings of the south wind, which then ceased to blow. Anu, the supreme or the sky god, summoned him before his gates to account for his behavior. But Inki cautioned him not to touch the bread and water that would be offered to him. When Adapa came before Anu, the two heavenly doorkeepers explained to Anu that as Adapa had been bestowed with omnipresence, he needed only immortality to become a god. Anu, in a change of heart, then offered Adapa the bread and water of eternal life, which he refused to take. Thus, mankind remained mortal. Along with the Adapa myth, we see stories of the seven sages or Apkallu in the ancient Sumerian myths. The Apkallu sages are said to have been created by the god Enki to establish culture and give civilization to mankind. They served as priests of Enki and as advisors or sages to the earliest kings or rulers of Sumeria before the flood. Adapa is one of the most famous among the mystical Apkallus, as he denied the gift of eternal life, and that also made him a cultural hero. The Apkallus received craft, art, language, magic, and so on from their gods and passed it to the king, who later provided it to the common man. They were seen as fish-like men who merged from the sweet water of Abzu. They are commonly represented as having the lower torso of a fish or dressed as a fish. This is maybe because they have come to the land in a boat or also because of the influence of fish-like deities in the region, as most of the common men had fishing as their occupation. The occupation of the community largely influences the character and the bodily features of the god they craft. The Apkallu sages can be closely related to the seven sages or the celebrated Saptarishis of Hindu mythology. Each Apkallu stays with a king to help him with his reign with their great wisdom and mystical powers, just like the Saptarishis. In some instances, we see a merging of king and the sage, where the sage becomes the king. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Urdu. Alulim became the king. He ruled for 28,800 years. Alulim is said to be the first king of Sumeria. The myths also associate King Alulim with the composite half man, half fish, which makes him an Apkallu. When Alulim was the king, Adapa was the sage who supported him in kingly matters. Here we see the king and the sage were Apkallus, both sons of god Enki. In Hindu mythology, we see Kashyapa Rishi, one of the seven sages, being the progenitor of man at the same time, aid King Daksha Prajapati in his kingly matters. When we apply the Kumarikandam concept into these myths, we understand that these myths have a common origin, as it was derived from a common myth. Applying this in the very name of Adapa, we see that Adapa can be called Adapan in the ancient Dravidian language. To understand the name or the word, we can divide it into ad and apan. From ad, we can project it to adi, which means first. Apan can be projected to apan, which means father. So, we can get the ancient projection of the root word of Adapa, that is Adiappan, which means the first father.